Hello all and welcome to the results of the Globetrotter TF2 Maps Detailing Contest. In this video I'll be going over each map, leaving a little bit of feedback, and then finally giving the results. I know the video's a bit late. I was meant to have it up last week, but it got a bit too ambitious and I got busy, general life stuff. But it's here now, so let's get into it. The map we're looking at now is by Dr. Squishy and is set in Carrera, Italy. This map is generally very nice, though it does have a few issues which bring it down a little bit, some of which are in the skybox, and honestly some things about the skybox are rather oddly placed. You have some areas which feel like they don't need to be skybox, and other areas which feel like they perhaps should be skybox. It's a bit odd. It is pretty good outside of those few issues. Also, navigation around the map it feels clumsy. Some areas feel clipped when they shouldn't be. It's not consistent, is what I'm trying to say. Which is unfortunate because the visuals on this map are consistent, and that's very nice. It looks great throughout. A lot of detail entries in the past, you have some areas which look spectacular and some areas which look really bad. But this maintains its quality throughout. The interior spaces are quite simple, but they're nice. It definitely helps that you've kept them minimal and you've focused on the exteriors, but they work well for the setting, and I don't think they need much more. Honestly, this is good as is. As for the exteriors, while I'm on that note, you've done a lot of work with these marble blocks, and although they are blocks, the custom textures you've used for them are great, and you've done a lot to sell them as proper marble that's being mined out or quarried out. I'm not sure what the correct term for it is. Although they are still just blocks, which is unfortunate because that does bring down my personal detailing score a bit. They're just a bit too simplistic. The lighting across the whole map, there's no problems here. It's all really great. Nothing is too dark or too bright, even though a lot of the map is white. You would expect there to be some HDR issues, but no, it's quite good. The elevators. What can I say about these that hasn't already been said? They are spectacular. I honestly want to see these in a normal TF2 map, although maybe a bit over-detailed for a standard map. This little pulley here, I assume this is a mechanism to split the marble. I don't think this is made using a Half-Life 2 fridge and washing machine in real life. Do correct me if I'm wrong. It's a nice use of assets outside of TF2, but they do stand out a little. Overall, I think this entry is pretty great, a bit simplistic, and it definitely has some small errors, which they do stick out a bit, I'll say that. But overall, great work. This next map is made by Matty and is set in London, England. Unfortunately, the first thing you see when loading into this map is a lighting error on a prop. Not a good first impression. However, the rest of the map definitely makes up for this. This first alleyway section you go through is beautifully detailed, and it's a great use of foliage props, as well as a couple of physics props like the soccer ball. You exit out onto this very nice little church and a shop. There's also a little backyard to the side with whatever this is. I'm not sure. I would actually really appreciate if someone could tell me what it is. You are immediately floored by how much little bits are in everywhere you look. The inside of the shop has all of these tables and chairs and little condiment bottles all laid out. The church is all lit up practically. You can see where the lights are meant to be in order to light up this church. Everything makes sense. Even the little side building of the church looks like something that was built onto an existing structure, like a lot of modern churches. This fish and chip shop feels like a real fish and chip shop and has a very warm and cozy feeling to it. The underground has a proper map and ticketing booth, which is made of brushes, I'm pretty sure. And a strange little area for the underground trains to run through, which honestly looks quite dangerous. I would have liked to see a little more detail inside of these stores here, but the flat texture works fine for the shelving, given the lighting. And while the rest of the map is incredible, this street I'm a little bit disappointed with. It does still look great, and I know it's kind of the theme of just what England is like, but these houses are almost entirely identical, and even if it is accurate, I would have liked to see a bit more variation in the actual design of the houses themselves. You've done a little bit with some texture work and a few props, like the milk on the doorsteps, but it would have been nice to get a little bit more. Maybe it's just a fault of the location. The skybox is really, really good. I can't get over how good this skybox is. I just love looking out over it and seeing all the London landmarks just out there in the distance. Although I'm not sure what the big industrial one is to the left. Visually, there's no problems. All the lighting is great. The buildings look great, although a bit samey on that residential street. So the only thing I can really say is fantastic work. Our next entry is by Paper Shadow and is also set in London, England. This time, however, set entirely within an underground train system. Starting off, we are in a small tunnel, and looking behind us we can immediately see a little waiting area of some kind, although there's not a whole lot in here. And then we descend a spiral staircase down into what looks to be a maintenance area of the underground, but it then goes immediately onto the train platform itself. And there's also a map here to indicate that this may be a public way of getting down into the train tunnel. So I'm a bit confused on whether this is meant to be a maintenance entrance or a public entrance. If it's meant to be public, it's a very dark and honestly quite dangerous spiral staircase to use, so I don't really buy it. The train channel itself is quite nicely detailed, although the train itself seems a bit small. Maybe it's just an error with the model, or I'm not sure if you resized it yourself or if that's just the normal size of the model, but it would have been good if you had increased the size yourself by making it prop dynamic, but that's more of a personal thing. Unfortunately, we can't enter these train tunnels. It would have been nice to see something actually back here, besides it just ending in black. But the little Spytek area here to the side is nice, and you do get a few glimpses of the neighbouring train tunnel, although some work is being done on it, so you can't access it. The lighting across the whole map is not great. In some areas, like the spiral staircase, you've used exclusively spotlights, which makes it very dark because it doesn't do a good job of lighting up the walls around it. And in other places, you've used exclusively just lights, which are oftentimes placed a bit too close to the wall and end up being very, very bright. Overall, what's here is nice, but I definitely feel as though you restricted yourself a lot with the way you built this whole area. It's a lot of tunnels that don't neighbor each other and instead take very linear paths, and it feels like you essentially mapped yourself into a literal corner with it and didn't know how to expand. It would have been really nice to be able to see that neighboring train tunnel, because this is a detail entry and that was within the space, and you've blocked it off to us. I'm assuming because you only detailed a small portion of it. But a lot of the areas that you have made are just lacking in detail or are a bit too basic. Now we're off to Perth, Australia with Ray Montesaurus' entry. You are immediately let known that this is Australia thanks to a Australian flag in clear view as you exit, as well as a little cardboard cutout kangaroo to the left. If you turn around, you'll see this amazingly detailed building, and while it is incredible, I would have liked to see the same level of detail throughout the rest of the map. A lot of the other buildings do feel very basic and blocky, especially several of the awnings above shops. I'm sure many people didn't catch this when they played, but there's a little jump up on this building that takes you into a small apartment and, of course, a brush toilet. This entry is quite large, and there's a lot to walk around and find. You've used a lot of player models to create humorous situations, which is always great to see, such as this heavy A-posing over a piece of steak, although I'm not sure if that one was actually intentional. The humor in this map actually goes a long way, like this resupply inside of a pharmacy, and that being the only thing in there. Or this group of snipers waiting in a crosswalk, although I wish they had some voice lines. This church, despite being in Skybox, I assume, I didn't actually check, is very well made. This little crate shop is very cute, although I wish the interiors of the shops had a bit more detail to them. Although I think that this grocery store has just enough. Any more and it would be a bit noisy with the amount of props in here. I love the custom textures for several of the products here, including this incredible Australia yum. I also would like to point out that you are using the correct outlets for Australia, which is a nice touch. Inside a couple of the stores you have these secret little rooms, which we will come back to later. But these things really give off a vibe of those old trade maps filled with secrets, which gives me a nice little feeling. Unfortunately, a couple of the props in this music store have alpha layering issues, but it's not a huge deal. This elevator is incredible. I'll just leave it at that. And then as we go through this tunnel, which could use a bit more detailing if I'm being honest, we come into this secret underground Spytek base. Continuing onwards though, we come into what looks to be a zoo of some kind. I would like to say a zoo, but this doesn't look like any zoo I know of. I would have liked something to happen when I tapped on the glass, but I also don't want to disturb him. You've used a change in fog to great effect for this area out the back, and this brick wall behind the top secret door is a great gag. And then as we approach this door and hit the button, we find probably my favourite detail of this map. The council. And I'll leave that at that. The actual visual detailing of this map excels on the surface. Down in the secret Spytek area, it's not the best. It definitely seems like you were running out of time as you made it, but the jokes are great, and it's a good experience just going through, and there's a bit of interactivity with it. So you earn bonus points for that. I touched on the skybox earlier, but I would like to touch on it a little more. It's overall excellent. In my opinion, the best skybox of all the entries, even though it may not be as grandiose as some of the others. And to wrap this one up, I'm just really charmed by this whole map. It's got a nice bit of exploration to it, some great bits of humor, and some great bits of detail, although it is a bit inconsistent and admittedly rough in areas. And now we are on to our final entry, made by Turns into Croc, set in Indonesia. We start in this workshop of some kind, and unfortunately the first thing you'll notice is that this resupply cabinet clips through the table next to it when it opens, which is a bit sad considering that's the one thing I found clipping on the map. The inside of this workshop is quite nice. I like the bits of detail you've got with the robot bits, and then as we move outside, there's great use of foliage. It feels like an active garden that someone's working on. And these little paving stones across the ground are really nice as well. Coming into this little dining area or kitchen, there is a prop here with missing materials. Additionally, walking near these doves will cause them to fly off, which is pretty nice. A simple effect, but you've pulled it off really well. This house at the end of the garden that you can go into is probably one of my favorite areas on the map. It feels very lived in, and this roof in particular, I want to call attention to it. It looks incredible. As we come outside into this neighborhood, the detailing seems to drop off a bit. There's a few more errors, and everything feels a bit less refined. A lot of the buildings are quite blocky, and it would have been nice if you could have pushed some of the door frames actually into the houses rather than having them just stick out like this. It looks a bit lazy. I can see that you've done it with some of the windows, so why not the doors as well? You have this no entry bit here by some trucks, but I'm not sure why it's set up like this. It feels as though there should be a tunnel past it, but there isn't one. You have a similar thing set up on the other streets, but this one doesn't go anywhere, which introduces a little bit of inconsistency. The water seems to be messed up here.
Dear Ronnie! Crikey!
I think this entry wins the award for having the most lived-in feel of all the entries. It definitely feels like I could have been walking around and I see some NPCs just going about daily business, like it's a Hitman game. Everything seems like it's there with a practical purpose. And the skybox, while simple, is very pretty. The environment lighting on this map also goes a long way towards making it feel as good as it does, and the glows on the exterior light bulbs help sell it as well. A very nice, cute little entry. I like it.
Thanks, mate.
And now, without any further waiting, it's time for the results. In 5th place, we have Paper Shadow with an average score of 53.0 out of 100. In 4th place, we have Dr. Squishy with an average score of 73.2 out of 100. In 3rd place, we have Turns into Croc with an average score of 75.5 out of 100. And in 2nd place, we have Ray Montesaurus with an average score of 87 out of 100. And that leaves the 1st place position to go to Matty, who got an average score of 91.4 out of 100. Congratulations to everyone, and thank you for entering. We'll see you next time, whenever that time may be. Bye bye.